Good evening, Ohio's News Center. I'm Chief Weather Forecaster Nick Dunn. Pleased to be welcomed tonight by Ken McNatt from the Mid-Ohio Weather Update, also an Ohio News Center forecaster. Good evening, Ken.
Good evening, Nick.
We've got some gusty winds, perhaps, and at least some heavy rain at times coming from the remnants of Hurricane Patricia, which, as you know, put a deluge in Texas. Looks like we're going to be seeing some of that over the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yes, indeed. And while it's not going to be as bad as Texas or Louisiana, we're still going to get some rain out of this, possibly up to 3 inches in southwest Ohio and eastern Indiana, but it's much needed rain for much of our region.
That's a very good thing to mention. A lot of us are still in abnormally dry situations. We have a couple counties in our Indiana counties that are actually in moderate drought, so I hope this rain doesn't come all at once in a certain time period. We don't think it will, and we think the flooding threat should be very minimal to none, but a good point to bring up if you're watching this, if you have any storm drains covered by leaves, be a good time to get out there and get those removed, because some of the rainfall totals we are projecting, even at a general 1 to 2 inches, you want to try and keep those storm drains clogged so you don't have poor drainage and lowland street flooding. So let's go ahead and hop right into things. This is our ONC official forecast for rainfall. This is not from any particular model. This is just kind of what I've extracted from all the models and put together. Areas in green, so northwest Indiana, also for portions of eastern Ohio into West Virginia, or at least portions of West Virginia, and also well into Pennsylvania. I'm projecting 1/2 of an inch to an inch. Again, this is just going to be an average. You may see localized lower and localized higher amounts. Very hard to pinpoint exactly how much rain one location is going to get. For those who live in the yellow area, this includes the vast majority of the ONC coverage area. We're thinking 1 to 2 inches. This also does include portions of the Mid-Ohio Weather Update area, basically from New Lexington down to near Parkersburg and down into Gallipolis, and does not include Spencer or Ripley, but we'll continue to monitor that. I don't foresee any adjustments just because model data today has been consistent. So again, 1 to 2 inches generally. Some of you may fall short of that, some of you may exceed 2 inches in a couple localized areas, and we'll discuss that here in just a couple more minutes. But the areas in red, this is where the best chance, in my mind, and also Ken and I agreed on this is the best area best chance we may see more than 2 inches. And Ken, as you and I talked about, more than 2 inches, yes, it's much needed rain, but hopefully it keeps that flood threat low.
Yes, indeed. And as long as the rain stays consistent of pace and is not too heavy and we don't have any training of cells or lines, I do believe that the flood threat will be minimal on this one.
Which is probably a welcome thing, because if you remember back in June we had plenty of flooding here to talk about, and even over the spring we had flooding too. So, but again, Muncie, Dayton, Cincinnati, those are kind of the target areas where we could see more than 2 inches of rain. Best chance of that happening. As if the rain and the potential for wind, which we'll talk about, and the gloominess and the cooler weather was not enough to talk about tonight, we have a threat for severe weather, believe it or not, on Wednesday. And Ken, this is something that kind of jumped out at us this afternoon, and really when the Storm Protection Center issued this morning, I was a little bit hesitant to talk about this, but the more we look into it, it looks like wind profiles can be there, and we've got a low risk for severe weather, which, by the way, does coincide with the marginal risk issued by the Storm Prediction Center.
Yes, indeed, and it did kind of blindside us a little bit that we started looking at the data and we started looking at the models, and the ingredients are there for thunderstorms. Now, whether those actually turn severe is still up in the air, but a lot of the ingredients, according to the model, suggest that if any do form, the main threat with these storms will be high winds. So it is something to pay attention to over the next couple days. But obviously we don't want to scare you. It's not going to be an outbreak, but maybe 1 or 2, possibly 3 storms become severe. So you do want to pay attention to watches and warnings on Wednesday if they do appear. But of course we'll have that here on Ohio News and Weather, and of course on Mid-Ohio Valley Weather Update as well.
That's a very good point. And again, the low risk is the area in green here. So Athens, Cambridge, Zanesville, Portsmouth, Chillicothe, Hillsborough, also into Spencer, West Virginia, Parkersburg, Elizabeth, and Ripley, also Mineral Wells as well. So again, that's just a few locations that are in here. Also New Philadelphia in Ohio and Coshocton as well. So as you can see here on the left, we're giving everything a 1 in terms of our radios. It's been quite a while since we've put this out here. We haven't had a severe weather threat, even a low threat for severe weather in quite some time. But for right now, we feel comfortable giving all of our chances of seeing severe weather at a 1 out of 10. However, if the wind threat does stay consistent, Ken, you and I talked about, we may have to bump that up to a 2, which would still fall into our low category.
Yes, indeed. In some of the wind profiles, and we'll be talking about some of that this evening as we talk about more graphics and stuff. But if those wind profile forecasts and models and outlooks stay consistent, then the threat will be just slightly higher. We don't anticipate this low risk becoming an elevated risk, and we don't anticipate the Storm Prediction Center to go from slight to marginal. Of course, you want to keep it tuned to us and your other weather sources to ensure you have the latest information.
Yep, absolutely. Moving on to our next thing, which is basically what's bringing all this in, is the rain. I've taken a recent image of our Pinpoint Storm Tracker radar. Rain coming out of Kentucky. You can see I've put the general direction in which rain is moving, generally north to south, perhaps a little bit southwest to northeast. Actually, I should say south to north, and maybe a little bit southwest to northeast. But coming out of Kentucky, it should reach the Ohio River overnight. Areas south of I-70 do stand at least a small chance for sprinkles or light showers. Everybody's in the 50s and to near 60 across most of southwest Ohio, otherwise low 50s for right now. But Ken, this is just the beginning of at least a 24-hour onset of rain.
Yes, and as this rain comes out of the south, the first thing you're going to notice, of course, is the cloudy skies and the rain, and it's going to be a light rain to start. Temperatures tomorrow should be about the same as they were today, but then they're going to hold pretty much steady overnight tomorrow night, and then the main event on Wednesday is when we get some moisture and some wind from the south and southwest, get some moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, you get some additional moisture from the remnants of Patricia, and this is when the heaviest rain is going to be, and this is when the temperature is actually going to rise probably towards 70 degrees for a lot of southern Ohio and southern Indiana and our West Virginia counties at the very least. But you're going to notice warmer air, but you're also going to notice an increase in winds. So if you have anything loose out there, you might want to secure it or bring it inside.
Yep. Good point there, and of course, if there's any wind-related alerts or advisories, we will bring those to you. Even though this is outside the ONC or MOVW coverage area, we do have a high wind watch in effect for Erie, Pennsylvania, and also Buffalo, New York. So it's not far away we're seeing wind alerts. However, Lake Erie playing a little bit of an extra role in enhancing of the wind. As Ken alluded to, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, we get some additional moisture. And here's the, as you've seen here for a couple minutes now, taking a look at it, you can see this is the WRF model, which Ken and I agree that this is the best model for representing coverage, intensity, and location of heaviest rain. This is Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. You can see a lot of the areas soaked in at least moderate rain. You can see across western Ohio into southeast Indiana a little bit more organized rain, and some of it heavy at times. So that's something that we're going to continue to keep our eyes on. And the rain will likely continue through all day Wednesday, or at least a good chunk of the day Wednesday, and will slowly taper off Wednesday evening. Now to get into what models are saying for rainfall. We've already showed you the ONC rainfall map. Now we're going to dive into some of the models. And Ken, meteograms is probably a term that most people don't know, and it's not out here to scare people, but we're basically showing you a graph of how much rain we're going to see. So it's something we're going to be talking about. We're going to start with Fort Wayne. This is, again, we're going to do 3 cities, Fort Wayne, Columbus, and Parkersburg, just to give you generalized ideas for each portion of our area. Here's the Fort Wayne rainfall meteogram. A meteogram basically is putting out a graph as to how much of a certain type of precipitation or temperature or wind is going to be out there. You can see that the red line, anything red or gray, is from the NAM, blue and green are from the GFS. The white line is the model average. As you can see across Fort Wayne, about 1.4 inches of rain according to the model average. You can see one model down here right around the 1 inch mark. We have a little model or two a little bit above 1.5 inches, so that's where you get the average. The National Weather Service is calling for about 1.2 to 1.3 inches of rain from this system. So, and then as you can see, by the weekend, another system moves in, we get a little more rain. Now we move into Columbus, and can we start to see a little of an increase in rainfall here across Columbus?
Yes, Columbus, as we mentioned when we showed you the WRF model, the heaviest rain is likely to be in central and western Ohio and southeast Indiana, and the meteogram for Columbus shows that, and you can see that the model average for this event is right around 1.5 inches for Columbus. Now, you can also see, though, the range. Like, you see the red line, the 12Z NAM, and you can also see the top line, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the 18Z GFS. The range is between 1 inch and about 1 8/10 of an inch. So the models seem pretty consistent as to how much rain can be expected in Columbus. So when we look at this, there's no true outlier from what I can see here. So 1 inch to 2 inches is a fair forecast right now for Columbus.
That's a very good point, Ken. And for those of you that were, as Ken was talking about the lines, the red line, and Ken, you were correct, that is the 18Z GFS, but the red line is the NAM, and I was pointing that out with you with the cursor, so hopefully you were able to follow along with that. Model average, as Ken said, about 1.5 inches. National Weather Service going a little bit higher than the model average, but not much. And now we're going to turn it back over to Ken with a look at the Parkersburg rainfall forecast, which, Ken, there's a little bit of a deviation here for Parkersburg.
Yeah, and that's what I found interesting about the Parkersburg here. If you notice, the top line goes up to 1 inch and 2/5, 1.4 inches. But the rest of them are between just under 0.6 of an inch to about 0.9 inches. Now, the model average, because of that outlier, is higher than the rest of the models. But I believe that a fair forecast for Parkersburg, because I do think this system has a little more moisture than what these models indicate, I do believe that the Parkersburg area will have between 3/4 of an inch and 1.25 inches when this is all said and done.
That's a very good point, Ken. And the National Weather Service for Parkersburg is coming in at about 0.8 of an inch, so that does fall into what Ken is thinking there. But again, these outliers, we kind of have to, sometimes we have to kind of discount them. So we look at the consistent model average, which is anywhere between 0.8 of an inch and about 1 inch. So that's kind of what Parkersburg is expecting. Now, again, as I said, if the rain was not enough, we've got wind to talk about. Now, I'm going to warn you, these wind meteograms, which are the same graphs, just different numbers on the left-hand side here, they're going to be all over the place. So we're going to explain this very carefully. So, Fort Wayne, Indiana, this is where the strongest winds are expected to be because they're going to be closer to the center of low pressure. And I'm going to circle this area here multiple times. This is where we're talking for the rainfall event, which is on Tuesday into Wednesday. And I can see multiple, it looks like that the model average for wind gusts is somewhere in the 15 to 25 mile per hour range, but as we've talked about, with plenty of moisture and plenty of warm air moving in, I think there's some concern we could see some higher wind gusts.
Indeed, and as we go from west to east, you're going to see the same thing, that even though the model average seems a bit low, we're thinking that these wind gusts, not necessarily the sustained winds, but the wind gusts, could be higher than what is indicated by the averages. We could see maybe winds, maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour, the gusts, 10 to 15 miles per hour more than what the model average indicates.
Yep, that's a good point. And then, Ken, what's been interesting, and we're going to notice this on all three, again, Fort Wayne, Columbus, and Parkersburg meteogram, is that the strongest winds appear to come in after the storm passes. And I want to pay attention to this green line here. There's one of them with the circles on it, and it's kind of hard to pick out. But this is the National Weather Service thinking for after the storm passes. Now, here in Fort Wayne, they're a little more in agreement, if you will, in terms of what the wind forecast may be. You can see some wind gusts of 25 to 30 miles per hour on Thursday going into Thursday night, which is a little bit after the main part of the storm has passed. But Ken, there's a lot of numbers well into the 40 and even one or two in the 50 mile per hour range.
Yes, and what I'm seeing, and especially as we talk about Columbus and Parkersburg, these wind gusts seem to happen right when the cold front will come through, and what I'm thinking here is that it's indicative of when thunderstorms kind of start forming and rolling through, which is why you see the severe threat in the south and east rather than the north and west, because what you're going to see in the west and in the north are more consistent showers where thunderstorms are not going to have a chance to form, whereas in the south and the east, you'll have the warmth of the day, you'll have the influx of moisture from the Gulf, you'll have warmer temperatures, you'll have an opportunity for thunderstorms to form. And what I see here, especially with the Columbus and the Parkersburg ones, that between basically, let's see here, about 12 UTC, which is 8 a.m., 8 a.m. Thursday, and about, let's see here, 18 UTC, which would be 2 p.m. Thursday. So early afternoon Thursday is when we really need to watch for thunderstorm development. And again, the gusty winds are what we need to watch out for. And I believe some of these outliers before the storm passes through might be indicative of of thunderstorm development.
That's a very good point. And another thing that we may need to mention here, Ken, is that perhaps some models may be delaying the timing of the cold front just a little bit because, as we know right now, the Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk out for Wednesday. So we'll have to watch how that plays out. Now, as Ken alluded to, let's go to the Columbus Mediogram for the wind forecast. We have one outlier here on Wednesday projecting wind gusts over 35 miles per hour Wednesday morning into the early afternoon hours. And we'll see what happens. National Service forecasting 20 to 25 mile per hour wind gusts, and there's a couple outliers that are even below that. But as we head into Thursday afternoon into Thursday night, again, we're seeing a dramatic jump in the winds. So we're going to have to see what ends up happening. Timing of that cold front may ultimately also decide as to whether the threat for Wednesday, but even after the cold front passes us on Wednesday morning to Thursday, we'll see how that pans out. But Ken, looking at the Columbus, it's kind of in line with the Fort Wayne in some sense that the strongest winds happen after the system passes.
Indeed, and yeah, I misspoke on that last one. I was actually looking at the Wednesday 12 and Wednesday 18, where you have some of these higher wind gusts, despite the average being 15 to 20 miles per hour. You can see some of these outliers going all the way up to 30, 35 miles per hour, and then it calms down, and then you have, after the storm passes and after most of the rain moves through, then the cold front moves through, and then you really see these gusts coming up into 30, 40, just short of 50 mile per hour like range in Columbus, and that won't be associated with any thunderstorms, but that'll be associated with the cold front moving through.
Yep, that's a good point. And again, timing of the cold front means everything, so some of the models could also be delaying the arrival time of the cold front. So there's still a lot to figure out with the wind. I've had a little bit of an interesting feeling as to what may happen. We may see a steady period of strong wind gusts. I know some meteorologists are also trying to figure that out as well. So it's going to be kind of a wait-and-see thing. Now, Ken, as we look at Parkersburg, I'm noticing kind of the same things here, except I see a couple more outliers for Wednesday afternoon and evening, with at least what some models are projecting as the passing of the cold front there.
And what we should keep in mind as well is that these lines are even closer together because there's an outlier later Friday morning, late Thursday night, early Friday morning, an outlier that goes near 60 miles per hour. And so it's harder to see these lines because the graph shows more miles per hour lines than the other ones did because of that outlier. But the one thing that remains consistent here is that Wednesday afternoon, early Wednesday evening, there are higher wind gusts there. And the model average, again, is between 15 and 20 miles per hour, but there are some outliers that take it to 30, 35 miles per hour, and that may be, once again, indicative of a thunderstorm development. Now, as we get to early Friday morning, Friday 00, Friday 06, which would be late Thursday evening, early Friday morning, between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m., there's going to be even gustier winds than what there will be tomorrow and then more so on Wednesday, because that will be the passage of the cold front. And I do believe we may have to watch out for the potential of wind advisories, maybe even short-term, Thursday evening, Friday morning. So we'll keep you in tune with that as well.
That's a good point. And Ken, I look at all three again, and I continue to see the National Service on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And I agree with you. This is going to have to be something we have to watch. When ultimately does that cold front come through, and things like that. But with the National Service being on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, it's definitely something to monitor.
Indeed, and that's all we can do at this point, because there's still some uncertainty as to timing, like you mentioned, and there's also uncertainty as to exactly how much wind will result from the cold moving through. And there's also uncertainty still left to people that it's wise to keep in touch with us, keep tuned with Ohio News and Weather and Mid-Ohio Valley Weather Update and all the other pages of Ohio's News Center.
It's a very good point. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this video up. And real quick, just want to point out that, again, we showed you these meteorograms. This is not our forecast. This is what the models are thinking. So that's what we're going off of. So, again, just want to give you guys a quick update. How much rain could you expect? Any severe weather potential and any kind of wind? Feel free to drop us some questions in the comment section of this video. We'll be more than glad to answer them for you. For forecaster Kim McNatt, I'm Chief Weather Forecaster Nick Dunn. Continue to keep it tuned to us for the latest information on this system and even on post-system weather as well.